Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 3, the final part for today for Thursday, April 11th, 2013. I'm Darko, and my website is ggnonline.com, and on YouTube, ddarko2012, ddarko2013. Donations are appreciated, and the links will be posted in YouTube's video description. Shell, Nestle, Monsanto, and McDonald's have biggest private spy outfits. Just as governments spy on activists, so do corporations. In an interview, investigative reporter is asked which corporations have the most extensive intelligence gathering operations. The answer says here, Royal Dutch Shell, Nestle, Monsanto, and McDonald's. So the roots of these policies go back to the early days of industrialization of capitalism. As the history chapter shows, the present corporate counter-strategies go back to the early 70s, and in the UK to the Thatcher days, with corporations today building on the similar plans developed back in the days by those in PR risk management. It says here, the networks of police and intelligence personnel now working in security for corporations, says here, or in consultancy is more than an old boy network exchanging information. The blurring boundaries give way to a joint network with a similar agenda of increasing power while getting rid of risk factors like boycotts or other political barriers, protests. 34% of Rasmussen poll takers say that the U.S. has crony capitalist economic system. Americans are almost evenly divided when asked if the U.S. has a free market economy or a crony capitalist one. This helps explain why they think more government involvement in the marketplace makes it less fair. BitCoin crashes down to $52 from $266. They say the exchange is down for maintenance. Bitcoin just hit a low of $52, almost $53 per Bitcoin on the BTCE.com exchange. At this point, the price is still double what it was 2 months ago, so it is yet to go through a full routing, erasing all gains since going parabolic. Pew poll says 5% of Americans love doing their taxes. An additional 29% said they like it. Why do people enjoy doing their taxes? Well, they get a refund. That is, they get back some of their money that the government has been holding interest-free while you work to pay them more. And what if you had to hold too much of your own money and then write the feds a check at the end of the year to cover the shortfall? In that case, you probably have to pay them penalties. It says, we can thank the great libertarian Milton Friedman for helping the federal government develop tax withholding, an ingenious government scam which helps the feds maximize revenues and hold excess funds interest-free for a time, all the while convincing some people that they were actually getting some kind of gift from the feds. Another reason for feminism besides producing good slaves, besides destroying the family, like we just talked about with the head of the Russian Orthodox Church saying, and then what? A tax base. It's a whole new tax base. Obama will become first president to spend $4 trillion in 1 year. In the historical tables, says here that the 2014 budget proposal this morning says here that it become the first president in the nation's history to preside over a federal government that spends more than $4 trillion in 1 year. But that's the beauty of this, quote, democratic system, is that people will say, oh, well, it's not his fault. He inherited this. So every douchebag will inherit it, right? Inherit the mess that was basically preceded them. No accountability and no responsibility. The agenda moves forward. The Department of Justice wants more for prisons than the U.S. security. Obama's proposed budget says here for the Department of Justice will spend $4.1 billion more on prisons than on national security. $8.5 billion for federal prisons and detention, $4.4 billion for national security, $390 million says for undefined protection from gun violence, $92 million enhancement for cybersecurity, $55 million for investigating and prosecuting financial mortgage fraud, so you can see where their priorities are, $25 million increase for immigration enforcement, and $258 million here for civil rights. $2 billion for state, local, and tribal law enforcement. Oh wow, yeah, $2 billion for basically revenue collectors, and an eye-opening map of which countries execute the most prisoners. So of course you see China at the top, followed by Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, USA, Yemen, Sudan, Afghanistan, and African countries. So it says here that indicates that the world still executed roughly the same number of people from roughly the same number of countries as it did in 2011. It says that New in 2012 is a dramatic doubling of executions in Iraq and reversals of long-standing death penalty moratoriums in countries such as Japan and India. It's interesting that they actually refer to these people as these countries as offenders. Those countries which China, Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and U.S. are the biggest offenders. So pretty interesting. I've mentioned this before, so disclaimer, I'm not for capital punishment when the state is issuing it. For basically families seeking out justice and that by themselves. If they want to do it, they can do it. If they want to waive their rights to the state, they can do it. But I don't think that families should be not have the opportunity to bypass courts and to carry out their own justice against people who have inflicted them, killed a family member or whatever, and or taken property and stuff. But I just don't trust the state when it comes to that. You don't want to give them, you don't want to give them a green pass to be the authorities on morality, especially when they're drone bombing innocent people around the world. So with that being said, you have Iran. Iran does what? A lot of times they're hanging bankers. They're hanging bankers for fraud. Where the U.S. they get profits, and they get rewarded for committing fraud. Man who sawed arms in Home Depot still critical. A man who intentionally sawed his arms to the bone in the Home Depot store in California remained hospitalized in critical condition on Thursday while investigators tried to determine what led to the horrific action. So, still not speaking. We don't know about his history, motive, concerns at this point. So, they'll say, oh, he was on psycho. He was probably on some kind of pharmaceutical drugs, combination with increase of aerosol spraying. Increase in what? In just our society being more sick and sick. Throw in some pulsing, microwaves, ELF, cell tower, wireless transmissions, and you got something like that. Oh, drive your car into oncoming traffic. Go on, do it. Suspect, I fantasized about stabbing people. The 20-year-old planned the rampage. So, almost sounds like a fake name, but the 20-year-old Dylan Quick told them he had fantasies of stabbing people. And another report I saw that he was into narcolepsy and cannibalism as well. So, court nixes anti-abortion giveaways in schools after students light fetus dolls on fire. So, it says here a federal appeals court ruled that an anti-abortion group did not have the right to distribute rubber fetus dolls to a high school because the students' destructive behavior on the dolls outweighed the group's free speech to distribute them. So, that's pretty messed up. The students from the anti-abortion group called the Relentless distributed rubber fetuses as propaganda to put God back into the schools, they're quoted as saying, at two high schools in Roswell, New Mexico, says only to have the dolls destroyed in various ways. Many of the students pulled the dolls apart, tearing their heads off and using them as rubber balls or sticking them on pencil tops. Others threw dolls and dolls parts at the popcorn ceiling so they become stuck. Dolls were used to plug toilets. Students covered the dolls in hand sanitizer and lit them on fire. One or more male students removed the dolls' heads, inverted the bodies to make them resemble penises, and hung them on the outside of their pants zippers. So the security officer described the day as a disaster because of the dolls. So they said here that they tried to hand the dolls out again, but administrators immediately stopped this second distribution. It seems students were only disruptive about the fetus dolls. On the same day, other students at Roswell High School were allowed to distribute Valentine's Day-related items such as candy, cards, and stuffed animals. The record does not tell whether any students distributed large quantities of these items or whether they received prior approval. So it's not just the future generations that I see as being very, very sick and messed up. You have these in the comment boards. Of course, this is from Raw Story, so it's kind of more of a left site. They're fun to set on fire if you fill them with hydrogen first. Says they also make a badass water balloon. Goat's head sent to Chicago Cubs owner. A curse on the team tied to Goat legend. The Chicago Cubs fans have long feared a curse on the team after a man with a goat was told to leave Wrigley Field during a 1945 championship game. It says here perhaps it was that story that prompted the delivery of a goat's head to the team's owner yesterday. The package contained no note, was passed to cops. They were investigating it. It was an intimidating package. The delivery comes amid a feud with locals over Wrigley Field renovations. McDonald's, the franchisees, services broken. The fast food giant attributes its woes to less than cheerful employees. So it goes on and says they're attributing its recent struggles to less than sunny dispositions of the teenagers taking your order. It says they basically said customer complaints have been rising said with rude or unprofessional employees topping the list. Said that one of the 5 complaints related to friendliness, while others were about speed of service. Some more scary news here. We have automakers launch recalls over airbags that can spray shrapnel. Faulty airbag that can explode and send shrapnel into the passenger cabin is responsible for a global recall of more than 3 million cars. So you might want to check that out if you have one. Honda, Nissan, Toyota, and GM. Racehorses are dropping dead in California. There's 17 confusing deaths since July. They died last year. It says here, 19 died in the year ending June 30th, 2012. 17 have died so far this year. They basically attributed to acute respiratory distress. They're not able to find the cause. Maybe they're not looking for certain things, like high levels of aluminum or barium or something, right? 50,000 tons of Dutch meat suspected of containing horse meat. So, again, this just spreading and spreading. U.S. rice imports contain harmful levels of lead. So, commercially available rice imported into the U.S. has revealed it contains levels of lead far higher than regulations suggest are safe. And even the ones that suggest are safe are probably not even really all that safe. It is known to be harmful to many organs in the central nervous system. It's particular risk for young children who suffer significant developmental problems if exposed to elevated lead levels. Rice from China and Taiwan had the highest levels, but the doctor stressed that all the samples significantly exceeded the PTTIs. Because rice is heavily irrigated or grown in heavily irrigated condition is more susceptible than other staple crops to environmental pollutants in irrigation water. The doctors also worked on quantifying arsenic contamination and is in fact working his way through the heavy metals one by one to determine their prevalence. He said the problem is the range of agricultural practices around the world which are based off what? Post-World War agrochemical companies like Dow and DuPont, man. If you look through the scientific literature, especially on India and China, they irrigate their crops with raw sewage, effluent, and untreated industrial effluent. So... also remember the whole thing about the recycling too. It's actually a lot of recycling is going from the developed countries or the West, whatever, out to like China and India, dumping their trash. It's not even getting recycled. Arsenic found in hundreds of beer samples, but experts say not to worry. The filtering process that makes your beer look nice and clear is also adding traces of arsenic to your booze. Add more than 25 parts per billion, more than twice the U.S. standard for water. The levels shouldn't be alarming because it's the kind of thing that you see in the dust or in the air. It says the Supreme Court to rule on whether human genes can be patented. This is kind of a big deal. The Utah biotech firm is to argue its patents on breast and ovarian cancer genes are necessary to fund further research. They'll hear these arguments next week to decide whether companies can patent human genes in a landmark case which could alter the course of U.S. medical research in the battle against diseases, right? And, being able to be born in a lab eventually, you have to pay for the right for these genes. Misdemeanor convictions in Colorado could call for DNA swab. It says whether it's an assault or a minor offense, such as destroying a library book, Coloradans convicted of a misdemeanor could have to open wide and say, should lawmakers pass a requirement that the state collect for them an oral DNA sample. Implantable electronics disappear in the body. So imagine pain-relieving electronics devices that can go in your body, work, then disappear completely when they're gone. This week, scientists show off advancements in what they're calling transient electronics. So I just don't trust this stuff, man. Like these glasses, Google Glass or whatever. I mean, they're going to be pulsing frequencies under your head. These things are going through your body. They have radio frequencies and stuff. These electronics, like from this article, the practice of sending electronic waste to developing countries and the pollution that leads to it exacerbates a problem. This is waste going through your body. It can't be good. First, I saw this article, texting while flying linked to commercial crash in first. Texting by a pilot before and during the 2011 medical helicopter flight in Missouri contributed to its crash. Then I saw this one, crashing passenger jet with Android phone. So what are they trying to do here? There's now another reason that here a hacker demonstrated how to remotely hijack and bring down an airplane using an app for the Android. Then we have Pentagon to boost robots with real brains. The technology would make robots truly anonymous. Pentagon funded a team of scientists have constructed a machine that functions like a human brain, would enable robots to think independently and act autonomously, so no responsibility. U.S. killer robot operators, drone pilots, weren't always certain who they were killing. Talking about Pakistan, we already covered that. This is GGN. I'm Darko. Thank you.